We had a great discussion last night around some of the things that our keynote speaker, Anthony Zeiker, had to say yesterday morning. Some people are skeptical about this idea of expanding television into a more or less 7-day-a-week series with a lot of backstories and a lot of opportunities to monetize, and for good reasons. And we'll hear some of the reasons possibly today, because we're going to start out with a panel on advertising, and we're going to have the privilege of hearing from one of the leading experts in advertising, in TV programming, interactivity in the United States, and who is well known as someone who is free with his opinions and definitely not in the mainstream when it comes to some of the aggressive approaches to monetization and changing things, and yet he's seen as a leading light in digital. He is Shelley Palmer. Shelley is the managing director of the Advanced Media Ventures Group, more importantly and better known for his work as a television personality. He appears on the weekly NBC live digital Live Digital with Shelley Palmer program, which is syndicated nationally. It's produced in New York. He's on Fox 5 in New York. He has a monthly Shelley Palmer digital living show. He has a radio show that's syndicated, and he's a 6-time Grammy Award winner. And to boot, he's also been awarded for his work as a composer. He holds a patent for the enhanced television interactive platform that's used by some programmers right now. So we're talking about a Renaissance man who has a tremendous vision of what's going on in the marketplace and doesn't put on rose-colored glasses. So we're going to have Shelley as our opening speaker, and then he'll be joined by 2 panelists who will sit with him and have a discussion around some of his points. I must say, and we're sorry to announce that Jim Turner, who is of Canoe Ventures, a dear friend and colleague, can't make it today. He fell ill and so wasn't able to leave New York. But I think we're going to have a very entertaining moment here with Shelley Palmer. Shelley?
Doesn't everybody want to come on down and sit in these seats here and get all cozy and intimate? Don't you really want to do that? Nah, I guess you don't. Okay. Awesome. Good morning. Oh, that's better. Excellent. Thanks, Fred, for that introduction. That sounded a lot more impressive than I actually am, so I appreciated that very much. Dinner last night was great. For those of you who missed it, I'm sorry. It was awesome. And last night, Fred and I got into what I would consider a heated discussion about making money. I was going to say monetization, but that's my least favorite word in the world. Just making money in the TV business. Jim Turner does send his regrets. Jim is a very close friend of mine, and he is really sad that he couldn't be here. He did come down with something horrifying, and hopefully he'll get better soon. What Jim would have told you is that he and I agree on absolutely nothing, so you missed out on another heated discussion. But I'll just sort of recount what Fred and I talked about for a second. And then we're going to get into TV Everywhere, challenges and solutions, which I think in and of itself is, if you ask the wrong question, you're going to get the wrong answer. The challenges and solutions around TV Everywhere are not really about TV Everywhere. They're about the fact that there are only 2 kinds of people and 2 kinds of devices in the world today, connected and not connected. And that's a really important point, because the not connected world still has all of the old ways that they connect to each other at their disposal. They still use telephones. They still talk to one another. And they still practice the sociology of television. And the sociology of television is very different from the technology of television. I like to call it TV the art form versus TV the platform. Sociology of television I can describe to you because I'm the physical embodiment of it. Based on my boyish figure, you can tell that I've never met a couch I didn't like. I've never met a bag of salty snacks I didn't like, and I've never met a six-pack of beer that didn't have my name on it. So if you add a remote control and some kind of screen, the sociology of television is perfect. What are you going to do? I'm going to watch TV. What are you going to watch? I don't know. I'll find it when I get there. I'm going to watch TV. There's no one in this room who hasn't said it out loud a million times to their significant other, to their friends, and gone and done it. Sociology of TV hasn't changed in a very long time and is unlikely to change, which is not to say there aren't changes in the sociology of television or media consumption, because I don't have to get into, well, let's put it this way. Everyone here is now, for 1 second, going to be given my permission to use yourself as a focus group of one. Ordinarily, that's an incredibly bad business idea. But right now, you can use yourself as a focus group of one. Your own opinion, your experience matters. How many people in this room consume media the same way today that they did 12 months ago? And the answer is nobody. End of story. So we all do things differently. We're all empowered differently. You can have the conversation about the cousin or the aunt or the uncle or the kids or how people do this or generation gap. That makes me sick, having that conversation at this point. There's no existential questions about consumer control. Consumers are in control. You're in control. And so does that mean you don't perform the sociology of doing television? You have not, then will never again say, your behavior is so dramatically changed by the emergence of this new technology that you will not ever utter the words, I'm going to watch TV, hear the question, what are you going to watch, and then answer it, well, I don't know, I'll find it when I get there. There's part of you that needs to veg every night, once a week, when you can, wants a companion. TV, for whatever reason, the art form, not the platform, has filled that bill. And there's an important distinction between TV, the art form, and TV, the platform. We shouldn't confuse the two. Big screen with an image on it does not need to come from your cable company, does not need to come from over the top, doesn't need to, could come wirelessly, could come from your Xbox. Verizon and Xbox just made me look super smart this week. In my 2006 book, Television Disrupted, the transition from network to networked TV, I spent a whole chapter talking about set-top boxes, game consoles as set-top boxes, and how that is an inevitable reality, that there's nothing that could stop it. That the audience of 13 to 32-year-old boys is a built-in audience that's completely missing from TV, the platform, and they'll be found there, and they need to mature well enough to not want to play video games 24 hours a day on their video game console, but they will at a certain point. And at that point, that's going to become the most formidable set-top box. I think Verizon just made me look smart. Netflix tried to make me look smart a couple months back, the same thing being available on pretty much every device. So let's go back. Connected and not connected. Two kinds of people, two kinds of technologies. Connected and not connected. Ray Kurzweil, how many people in this room know who Ray Kurzweil is? Raise your hand. Okay, for the rest of you, Ray Kurzweil is a very famous inventor, although apparently not in this room. Ray, among other things, invented an optical scanner that allowed blind people to read in the 70s, when that was actually hard to do. And although it's interesting that you would think that the upside of that was that blind people could now read, the more interesting thing is that the device gave people who were vision impaired their privacy back, because no one had to read to them. The machine could read to them. And that was the first time in many unsighted people's lives that they had privacy, that they could actually control their environment in a way they hadn't before, get a private, intimate letter or a legal document and get it read to them by a machine as opposed to a person. Fascinating guy. Ray credits his inventing success with understanding a thing he calls the law of accelerating returns. And what he's saying is that the rate of change, he has a book called The Singularity is Near. I would beg you to read the first 100 pages of it. All the other things about Ray Kurzweil, you can take or leave. He takes 140 vitamin pills a day. He wants to live till 2099. He's eccentric. The first 100 pages of The Singularity is Near is a must-read, because it talks about, the thesis of this book is the law of accelerating returns. And what he says is that the rate of change in technology is exponential, which we all experience every day. But it's changing so quickly that the exponent is changing exponentially. And that to be a good inventor, what Ray liked to do was not understand where he thought the marketplace would be at the end of his invention, or when his invention was able to come to market at the end of that cycle, but really calculate, using his law of accelerating returns, not only where the market would be, but really where it would be, how different society would be. Now, I've got a mantra: technology is meaningless unless it changes the way we behave. I say it all the time. It's the filter I use to determine if a bright, shiny new object is really the new thing, with all accolades to Michael Lewis. What are the behavior-changing technologies? What do we mean by that? Certainly the smartphone has changed a lot about the way we behave. 3G networks, it augmented our behavior, and in some cases changed our behavior, but the real change is going to happen at the end of 2013. That behavioral change is going to be so profound and so dramatic that the idea of connected and not connected are going to take on new meanings. Why? Because at the end of 2013, Verizon's going to have a nationwide, coast-to-coast 4G network that is 6 to 10 times faster than the 3G network that's in place right now and only available in about 94% of the country, and where it is available, it's not necessarily that great. 4G has none of the problems that 3G has, except for data caps, which we'll get to in a minute. So how will our lives change in a connected world when we are in a handheld environment or a fixed wireless environment that is 6 to 10 times faster than the one we're in right now, where the rate of change is exponential to where we are? How will our behaviors change? What will happen at retail when taking a picture of an item gives you price transparency in industries that have never had price transparency before? How will packaged goods survive that? How will things that are commodity priced survive that? How will the race to the bottom in retail pricing change the way advertisers have to work? People like to point to the automotive industry and say, well, it's already happened in automotive. People already do all their research. They know what the car costs. No, they don't. The automotive industry doesn't price cars for you to know what they cost. The automotive industry has a completely separate set of pricing you will never see, and dealers are remunerated completely differently than the way you think they are. And when you're paying $50 less than invoice, they're lying to you. Go ask any car guy. There's plenty of margin in the car. Plenty of margin in the car. Toothpaste vendors are not going to be able to fake price transparency. As you approach perfect competition, and a term of art, perfect competition, the asymmetry of knowledge goes away. It equalizes. Every single thing we know about the commerce that drives our business is based on the concept of the asymmetry of knowledge. I know this thing should cost me between $5 and $6. You know it should cost between $5 and $6, and you know you paid $2 for it. You really can sell it to me for $3 or $4. You'd rather not. It's that asymmetry of knowledge that drives the entire world. What happens when the proletariat has access to that information? You want to know about behavior changes? In my pocket, I have an iPhone 4S. You probably have something else. Doesn't matter what it is. It's probably on a 3G or a 4G network. It's probably got a good processor in it. But I'll tell you what it really means, right? None of that matters. That technology doesn't matter at all. What matters is that in my hand right now, I have access to more information personally this second than was available to President Obama from all 17 security agencies the day he took office. And I'm a private citizen. Two kinds of people in the world, two kinds of devices, connected and not connected. That's really important because now we have a new issue that we have to deal with as broadcasters, as cablecasters, as people in the industry of communicating. We're competing with our clients for the one thing that we all value the most and have the least of, our time. Our business is 4 revenue streams. Subscription, right? Everybody knows that. Advertising revenue, merchandising, and for some of us in the room, lawsuits. That's it. That was a joke aimed at a very specific person here. Ah, good, got it, excellent. So those are the 4. Really, there's 3, and to be honest, there are 2. We're seeing a kind of changing of the guard with respect to subscription fees and advertiser dollars. And as we know, more people are watching more TV, the art form, than ever before in history, and making more television, the art form, than any time in history. TV, the platform's having a pretty decent year if you've got good content. Jersey Shore seems to be doing a big number. I don't know what that says about our society. Yes, I do. But they're making money. A bunch of shows are making money with de minimisly small audiences, relativistically, but they're making money. And remember, there's not one person, not one organization, not one human being anywhere in the food chain that gets governed for innovation. We're all governed for quarterly numbers. We're gonna make our numbers. No one in here is getting a bonus for spending a bunch of R&D money, unless you're the R&D director, in which case you're given a budget. But no one in the real world is given any money, or any points, or any bonuses for innovation. You get bonuses for making your numbers and exceeding them and increasing shareholder value for the companies for which you work. Two kinds of people, two kinds of devices. Technology is meaningless unless it changes the way we behave. TV, the art form, vibrant, fantastic. TV, the platform, in a very funny place. Looks like it's doing fine, but there's a lot of stresses. And we're in a weird place in this asymmetry of knowledge because our clients and our viewers are both approaching transparency using the same technology. A big FMCG firm knows exactly what its velocity at retail is. It can look very closely at whatever program you run. It can look very closely at whatever advertising is embodied in that programming, and literally, silo by silo, determine the efficacy of that purchase in a way that the media company can't because they're not privy to the data of what actually moved off the shelves. And in mature businesses, really mature businesses, big FMCG, just all big advertisers, the 395 network advertisers, take them as a group, the big advertising money. These guys only have one thing they can do in order to make their paychecks bigger, and that's drive velocity at retail. It's the only thing they want to do. If you ask a marketer what their job is, they will tell you flat out, the only way I can increase my bonus this year, the only way I can get a better job, the only way I can go from vice president of whatever I am to senior vice president of whatever I am is by increasing velocity at retail. The only way it can be done. Now, by velocity at retail, we mean just moving stuff off the shelves faster. There's no more shelf space that can be had. There are no more places to distribute. Those ships have sailed. You won't find a Coca-Cola machine, a space for a Coca-Cola machine or a Pepsi machine. Well, Pepsi's not really true. You won't find a place for a Coca-Cola machine anywhere in the world there isn't one, if there should be there. You won't find another 6 inches of space for Axe body wash in Walmart because Walmart has decided this 2.4 feet is what they get. They can't get 2.5 feet. If they could actually make more money. The only way they can make more money is driving stuff off the shelves. And so we are now brought to the most interesting part of this conversation. How do we correlate what we do with that? We have a currency in our business. The currency is Nielsen Media Research. We have HUT levels, we have gross rating points, we have demographics, we have demos. We buy and sell and trade very large part of $250 billion worth of media time on those metrics alone. Now, has anybody ever been on the Nielsen Media Research website? This is good reading. Go to the part where they tell you what they do, and then go to the part where they disclaim what they do. It reminds me a lot of the Photoshop website. Who's been on the Photoshop website? The Photoshop website, and those of you who don't know what Photoshop is, it's kind of a popular program for playing with photos. You may have seen some photos that have been doctored or enhanced by Photoshop. But it's odd because when you go to the Photoshop website, it tells you flat out that Photoshop should never be used to do anything with photographs, and it may ruin your photographs, and it probably is not really good for doing anything with photographs. And by the way, if you mess up your photograph, it's not their fault. Guess what? Nielsen's disclaimer pretty much says the data is not fit for any particular purpose, and you shouldn't trust it or use it. That's what it says right on the website. Like $250 million gets traded annually just on those metrics alone. The beautiful thing is it's a currency that we can trade with, and it actually doesn't matter whether they're true or false as long as they're all the same. As long as that playing field is level, and as long as that's a real currency that we understand, we can do business. There's another thing that we're going to talk about today. It's a concept of engagement, the most misused word in the universe. Engagement is a concept, it's not a currency. There's no quantification for engagement. In the second to last episode of American Idol, there were 70 million votes. In the last episode where you could vote, there were 80 million votes. I'm not an idiot. I know that 80 million is better than 70 million. It was bigger than 70 million. And so pretend I'm the sales guy at Fox. And I walk into an advertiser and I say, hey, advertiser, I had higher engagement in my last show than my second to last show. See? 10 million more people engaged. And I can give you all kinds of metrics about that engagement. They spent 4.4 minutes doing this and 2.3 seconds doing that and 9.4 seconds doing that. And look, overall, I was able to get the thing they value the most and have the least of their time. I was able to get them engaged with my programming, which you sponsor. Pay me more. There's no way to quantify that. Not industry standard. We can go in and ask for it. God knows we do. We can go in and ask for it all day long, but there's no way to quantify it. And so the problem that we need to solve in TV Everywhere, the challenges and solutions, the problem we need to get to the heart of is how does engagement, however you define it, get correlated to market share for the brands, the guys who are actually paying the money. There's an amazing amount of inertia pushing back against that ever happening, because the opacity between the buy side and the sell side is what drives commerce in the television advertising business. And in a weird way, it also drives commerce in the subscription business. This measurement conundrum, this paradoxical problem, is really what we're up against as an industry. And so I would submit to you, I was at Apple just up the block from here a couple of months back, and I was sitting in a room and I was being pitched by the nice people at Apple, along with a group of 50 executives that I led there on a bus tour. We were doing our Silicon Valley digital deep dive, and one of our stops was Apple, and I took all the executives in, and we're sitting there, we had a great lunch and hanging out, and then they pitched us iAds. iAds are these little ads that pop up inside of your iPhone or iDevice that they sell, and they've had various amounts of success with it. And they put a stat, and I'm not under NDA about this stat, they put a stat up on the wall in their public deck, and they said that if you have an iDevice, like an iPhone, you spend 73 minutes a day with apps. Now, I don't like to curse from the stage. I never do it. Bob Gold used to do my PR, and he would admonish me never to say a nasty, anti-George Carlin word from the stage. Forgive me, Bob Gold. I called bullshit on that immediately. I held up my iPhone 4, because it was a 4, this 4S is only a couple days old, and I said to the nice people at Apple, pardon me, this is my external battery, which doubles the battery life of my iPhone. This is the iPhone without the doubled battery. It only lasts 45 minutes. How could I spend 73 minutes only on apps with it? And she laughed. She said, well, no, we have the stats. Okay. But Apple believes that you spend 73 minutes a day doing apps on your iDevice, or multiple iDevices, apparently, or iDevices with external batteries. And so I asked the question to one of my brand clients who I was there with, and I said, well, 73 minutes sounds like an awesome amount of engagement. I love that. I mean, Apple must know, after all. This is Apple. They're made of numbers. They know everything. They have more cash than the United States government. These guys, they're awesome. And my brand friend, whose name I will not disclose to you, one of my brand clients, she leans over, whispers in my ear, just tell me how it drives market share. Just correlate that 73 minutes in any obtuse, crazy, insane way. I get that they're playing sponsored versions of Angry Birds. I get it. How much of my blank did it sell? Just show me how to find that calculation. I will find you all the money I have in the world. Because then it's a cash machine. You built a slot machine. In goes a nickel, out comes some kind of market share. And in a mature brand, in a mature FMCG brand, a mature QSR brand, you tick up a quarter market point, a given program. You're talking about changing where you live, what car you drive, your Christmas bonus. These guys are highly motivated to make that calculation. Doesn't exist. And if you do have the answer and you're sitting out there, raise your hand and call BS on me right now. Tell me how to do it, because we're going to stop talking and I'm going to get you on a plane with me right now and we're going to go see about 7 of the world's biggest brands, and we're going to make a fortune. That's how sure I am of what I just said, and how sure I am that none of you have the answer to it. Not in the real world. Not that it'll plug into SAP and show an ROI or an ROAS that a brand will pay for. Now, when you talk about subscriptions and the balance of subscription revenue and advertising revenue for big cablers, that's becoming interesting too, because a very few companies are driving an awful lot of commerce at the content publishers, and their agendas have nothing to do with the content publishers' agendas. I don't know if you guys remember, there was a little lawsuit just a while back between Time Warner Cable and Viacom. Anyone remember that lawsuit? Centered around an iPad. A lot of people thought that this was a rights issue, that there was some content being played on iPads that they didn't have the rights to play. And there was a lot written about that. It's not what happened at all. If an ad plays in the woods and there's no one there to measure it, it didn't play. That's the whole story. TV everywhere is awesome. Measurement everywhere is mythology. As we wrest control, there are lots of issues. One is political. We have a new set of politics that we'll never get away from, that's never going to end. It started with the Arab Spring. It's manifested itself here in the BART system. It's manifested itself around the nation as Occupy Wall Street, Occupy whatever. We've seen the riots in London. Remember, everybody's a publisher. Everybody's connected. Connected people have ways to organize, self-organize, and my take on Occupy Wall Street was it was an adhocracy, a physical embodiment of a community of interest that self-assembled around an idea. The idea was anger. They were all angry at different things, but they were all, the solidarity was around just being angry. They had a million other causes and have a million other causes, and should they ever wire themselves together, they might be a powerful group. But that adhocracy was a physicalization of a social media community of interest, or a trust circle that's centered around one attribute, anger. That's the political problem. We can now, for the first time in history, blanket ourselves in the comfort of the information that only we want to hear, the way we want to hear it. We can build a cocoon. I've looked through every history book. I've gone online. I've done months of research. I have found no society in recorded history where that's been possible at scale. Certainly if you're an Amish person or a Mennonite or a Jainist monk or a Taoist or a Hasidic Jew, you could go to cloister your community, or you could go to a monastery, or do whatever you do to shut yourself out from the outside world. And you could build a society where kids are educated till 8th grade and then they go into the fields. Yeah, there's some pockets of that in our world. But holding this device in my hand, and if I have a red state ideology, I never have to hear a word about the blue states directly from the blue state. I can hear it filtered through the red states, and vice versa. I can blanket myself in the comfort of the information that I want to hear. I never have to be out of my comfort zone. And then I can be pridefully stupid about what I know. My guys told me this. And if you don't think that that political reality is happening now, I ask you to look around. The other thing that happens with this consumer control is that they choose what they want to choose. Now, we used to stand up here a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 15 years ago, when this was the year of interactive television 15 years ago, or the year of whatever we're going to talk about 15 years ago. And we would say, we, what I want, when I want, where I want. And people would get up and they'd do panels on it. You'd have everybody talking about how everybody's going to have everything where they... The best practices version of that is ESPN. A pretty good version of it is NFL. It's not really what I want, when I want, where I want. It's right person, right place, right time. Those are very controlled environments. But you know what? We can't control we. And TV everywhere can't monetize it until it can be absolutely measured. And more importantly, we have to solve for the second fundamental issue inside of this crazy equation. The first, stated, just to say it again, is correlating engagement to market share, which that's formidable. The second problem is a problem that's more insidious and more endemic and mathematically harder to solve, and that's supply and demand. The reason that internet dollars are a fraction of television dollars has to do with supply and demand, scarcity and ubiquity. And it's a problem that may not be able to be solved. Stated as simply as I can, 9 o'clock to 9 o'clock and 30 seconds on Thursday night on any broadcast or cable network is a scarce resource. And the HUT levels being what they are, it's the most number of people that are in front of a TV set, regardless of how they disperse across the 500 or 600 channels they have options to view, or things they can do in front of a TV set. But those who aggregate or self-assemble around shows like Grey's Anatomy on Thursday night at 9 o'clock are worth $250,000 for 30 seconds to somebody, because that's what they're getting. It's about somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000 is what they're charging on average. If you were needing to reach everyone in America who has a hope of buying something over the weekend, calling them to action, Thursday night's a good time to advertise in prime time. It's called prime time because the HUT levels are highest, houses using television are highest, and everybody gets paid on Friday. And you're not going to see them again until Monday morning when they're out of money and they have a hangover. So Thursday night's not a bad night. Very scarce resource. Supply and demand. What happens when I take that exact same piece of content and I remove 100% of its temporal and geographic restrictions? Now I can see it anytime, any place I want by just clicking on the internet. Something that was scarce now becomes completely ubiquitous. What has to happen to the price? You cannot find any example of anything that is more valuable when it is ubiquitous than when it is scarce. If these tables were made of gold, the chairs were made of gold, and everything in the room was gold, we would need thousands of military personnel around this room to guard it. Why? It's just a piece of metal. It's not a lot of it. It's got some value. It's scarce. If you can find a place where something scarce is more valuable than something, or less valuable than something ubiquitous, let me know. Online, you immediately take away scarcity. So, when I take a piece of TV content that's a scarce linear resource, that finds an audience, a specific audience, who I package and sell to an advertiser, or who I package and ask for money, and I actually don't get to ask them for money, right? I ask the cable guy to pay me money because my cable network is valuable. A little different than actually asking the consumer. When I take that scarce resource and I make it available everywhere, which is in the name, TV everywhere, what has to happen to the price? It's an insidious mathematical problem that doesn't have a good outcome. Something that is ubiquitous is always less valuable than something that's scarce. So we could say that, wait, the logic is wrong. Here's the pushback. I will yell at myself for this. It's not that it's available everywhere and that diminishes its value. That increases its value because it expands the size of the audience. And in the television business, the bigger the audience, the more valuable the audience is. Therefore, you're wrong. No. That's true when Nielsen does the ratings. There, a TV set that's on in a house with everyone in the kitchen is as valuable as a TV with everyone sitting in front of it. Here, no one, and I mean no one, can have it play while they're not in front of it, because it's playing on their device, and no one's burning their battery and going to the bathroom. No one's burning their battery and getting on the phone and talking to somebody else. These are real numbers. We've never dealt with real numbers. We've never even come close to dealing with real numbers. 7 years ago, there was something magical about the TV business. From 7 years ago to the beginning of TV, there was something magical about the TV business. You ran an ad, you sold more stuff. You didn't run an ad on TV, you sold less stuff. This was not hard. Even a brand executive could figure this out. I'll run some TV. About 7 years ago, they started to get into the age of big data, where they could measure stuff, really seriously measure stuff, the brands, without anybody's help. They bought Nielsen's data. They bought MRI's data, GfK, MRI, Simmons, all those guys. They bought all those guys' data, Ipsos data, all the tracking. They had their own scanner data. And they finally had computer power that was well distributed enough inside their organizations, and they had enough MBAs who were really, really good at spreadsheets to figure out how their money was being spent and what it meant to them. So for the first time in history, media salespeople would walk into a big brand, and the brand would know more about the efficacy of what they were selling than the sales guy. If you look at the really big organizations and you look at how the sales people's lives have changed in the last 5 years, it tells a very interesting story about who's in control of how that money gets spent and why and what. So, in the age of big data, what do? Where every bit of information is available to us and we need to add narrative to it to turn it into knowledge, contextualize it, make it valuable, do something that would allow us to be better at our job. The easy, instant, we've been talking about it for 15 years solution, addressability and targeting. I know, forget this TV waste, Nielsen is ridiculous, let's get away from that, we'll build our own, we'll take the world by storm. We'll buck the status quo. We shall change everything. We'll find the right person at the right place at the right time. We will give them exactly what they want. It will be relevant to them. And everyone knows that people don't hate advertising. People hate irrelevant advertising. They love regular advertising that's relevant to them. We know that to be absolutely true. I don't know who actually believes that, but that's what I hear, that the more relevant an ad is, the more likely you are to respond to it, to engage with it, whatever that actually means. Okay, I accept. So we go to the brand, everyone in this room, you come with me, we're gonna go see a brand, we'll go see a big FMCG brand, because they're the guys that spend really big money, or big pharma, we can go to pharma, we'll go see some pharma guys. Everyone in this room is of an age where I'm sure you see enough pharma commercials to make you wonder about how healthy you actually are. I know when I watch NBC, I watch Brian Williams pretty much each evening when I grab my afternoon snack. And I think I need Vesicare and the purple pill, and I didn't know I had restless leg syndrome until I saw the commercial, and I'm wondering if I could get my hair back and in the bedroom, obviously, I'm inadequate because enough people are telling me I'm inadequate that I think I need 4 different kinds of drugs, and I'm very concerned that if my erection lasts more than 4 hours, I'll die. That's on television. And then AARP lets me know that I could get some life insurance if I want it. Do you think they're targeting me? Do you think you could be any more targeted? I'm 53 years old. I'm a father of 3, a grandfather of 2. I'm calorically challenged and follically challenged. Do you think they're advertising in a targeted way? You think I'm seeing ads for like going to Cancun with 20-year-old babes? No. How much more targeting do you think the advertising industry could do? Well, wait a second. Not only do I find those ads irrelevant, I find them all offensive. But it doesn't stop me from watching Brian Williams. What do? I self-select out of the commercial by DVRing it for 15 minutes and watching the news that I want to watch because I happen to like the way Brian Williams gives the news. This is my very large hand gesture. One of these fingers goes up towards the TV set. And I'm in the TV business, and I'm not going to take that crap from them. But if I'm a marketer, I'm so perfectly segmented in what everyone would describe as a total waste model. 100% of that advertising is wasted because I don't care about any of that stuff. 100% of it's wasted. But not if you look at my profile. If you demographically profiled me, that's exactly what you should be selling me right now. I just don't want to see it. It makes me feel terrible about myself. It makes me not want to watch your show. Could you imagine what would happen in our world if the metrics I just described to you came back in real time or even pseudo-real time to the advertiser? How would NBC feel? What would they have to charge Big Pharma to put an ad for Nexium in front of me that I just keep going, hate this, hate this, hate this, don't want to see it, hate it? One of my best friends was just diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and it came from acid reflux. That's a symptom, and he had been taking the purple pill for about 2 years, and his doctor had prescribed it for him because he went in and asked for the purple pill because he'd seen it on TV. As opposed to doing the endoscopy, which they ultimately did, this endoscopic sonogram, which showed the tumor on his pancreas near his esophagus. He shouldn't self-diagnose, and those commercials shouldn't be on the air. And when they work, they don't necessarily have the desired outcome. So that's the serious part of this. It's just a guy who watches TV, who goes to the doctor when he feels sick, who's got the best health care in the world, private health care, but didn't think anything of it, never heard of the purple pill, decided he'd go in and ask for it. Hey, I have a lot of recurrent heartburn. It's not terrible. Had he made that report to his doctor up front, the doctor would have done something completely different. Went and asked for the purple pill, has a heartburn. Social consciousness is raised towards heartburn. They talk about a lot of things in the disclaimer. They don't say, by the way, if you have persistent serious this, it could be a sign of these 4 kinds of cancer. Go see your doctor. They don't say that. They tell you they can cause nausea, diarrhea, death. They don't tell you from what. Advertising works. Waste advertising works because it's highly targeted. He's 58 years old. So how much more targeted could I get? Let's lighten this up. I know I could set it up so that whenever I have data out there, whatever the data is, I could correlate that data, correlate it to the heuristics of the day. I can correlate it to inventory levels. I can put this whole thing together, and I can send you the ad that's exactly relevant. Shelley, you need to have a new skateboard. I don't know, I like my old skateboard, but maybe I need a new skateboard. That's great. Then I go to my client and I say, there are 6.8 million households in this particular market, but at any given time, only about 500,000 households are watching this show. But I can segment out those 500,000 people, and I can give you the 400 people who are likely to care about your ad. Will you sell 2 skateboards? That's not the whole metric. But when you ask someone to do this and you lay it out in that sales way, they look at the metric as the only way to correlate the ROI. What about decay value of the advertising? If I say Mean Joe Green to this group, can anyone think of an ad or a brand? Say it out loud. Say it. 25 years ago, if I said, like, teach the world to sing, anyone can think of a brand? 30 years ago. Decay value. How does that correlate to sales? There are more than one metric. And not to put too fine a point on it, there is no such thing as advertising. There is at least 3 kinds of advertising that we deal with in our business. At least. And I would argue that there are very specific subsets of those. Call to action, where I'm calling you to do something at a later date. Direct response, where I'm asking you to do it right now. And lifestyle or brand, where I just want you to be part of this thing that I'm trying to create, this wonderful emotional thing I'm trying to create. They have nothing to do with one another. They aren't measured the same way. What does targeting addressability do for each of those? And how will each individual brand prosper by using them? These are the challenges, the serious challenges, for not only TV everywhere, but for living in a world with only 2 kinds of people and 2 kinds of devices, connected and not connected.